Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Kate Ferguson, Political Editor at The Sun on Sunday. Welcome and great to see both of you. So, to the front pages, let's see what's making the fronts. Referendum in the bin, that is how the Metro headlines the Supreme Court ruling that a second independence referendum in Scotland can't be held without permission from Westminster. The Eye says that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a battle with his own MPs who are demanding he comes up with new policies and a clear agenda to take the party and the country forward. Daily Mail reporting that drivers are being hit with record numbers of parking tickets because a promised government crackdown on so-called cowboy parking operators hasn't happened yet. The Guardian leading with claims that a Conservative peer and her family received millions of pounds after a personal protection equipment company was awarded a government contract during the pandemic on her recommendation. Lawyers for the peer say they can't comment while an investigation is ongoing. The Times says the government is to launch a massive Save Energy campaign to get people to use less power in the face of rising prices and the pressure on suppliers from Russia. According to The Telegraph, GPs who are failing to see enough patients face-to-face are to be named and shamed to try to reduce the stress on hospital emergency services. The Express has news that a new drug proven to slow down the advance of Alzheimer's disease could be available here next year. Financial Times reporting that businesses and unions want the government to scrap its planned bonfire of EU regulations because it would only cause more confusion and disruption to companies and employees. The Sun leads with claims by TV presenter Johnny Irwin that he was sacked from his job on the show A Place in the Sun after he told his bosses he had terminal cancer. Well, the Star can't resist laughing at Germany's footballers for losing to Japan at the World Cup. Quick reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you listen to our guests. So let us head to Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Kate Ferguson, Political Editor at The Sun on Sunday. Welcome to both of you. That court decision today, front page of the Metro, referendum in the bin. They're having a bit of a joke, aren't they, at that? But Nicola Sturgeon, Kevin, making quite clear it's not over.
Yeah, I don't know if we're supposed to use a Scottish accent. Is that what the Metro means there with that pun? But now it was very unsurprising, really, because I think the legislation was clear that it's the UK government, the Prime Minister, who would give the authority for another Scottish referendum. But Nicola Sturgeon's playing a political game here. I don't think she ever thought she would win. She might have thought the court would rule that until the draft legislation is fully published in Scotland, there would be no ruling. But she can now say, look, Westminster, England is stopping the Scottish people having the referendum they want through the Scottish Parliament, which they elected. And she says she'll make it a big issue at the next general election, turn it into a referendum. Well, that's going to be dangerous should the SNP not get more than 50% of the vote in that election, which they never have, and also because Labour's resurgent in Scotland under Anna Sarwar, it gives them a way in of saying a campaign, look, this is about how you're going to rule Scotland now, it's about your services. Why don't you vote for that rather than this obsession with independence of a party, which in 2014 said it would be once in a generation chance. Well, the generation's normally 25 to 30 years because it's defined as if somebody's born, then they grow up and have children of their own. But it's a big political issue, particularly in Scotland.
I mean, there are so many questions that come from this, aren't there, Kate? Does a vote for the SNP mean support for independence when we've seen the collapse of Labour in Scotland? And also, we know Nicola Sturgeon is an arch political strategist. Some commentators saying she didn't want a referendum, she didn't know she was going to win it. Better for the UK government to say no to it, or the courts rather, than her actually not have it. And now making the next general election a one-issue vote means people don't look at her record on, for example, education and health in Scotland.
Yeah, I think anything that detracts for Scottish people from looking at the SNP record on public services is probably a good thing for the SNP. I mean, in this case today, they've obviously said Scotland can't go ahead and have an indicative referendum without the permission of Parliament. But there's this amazing quote in the Metro splash where Nicola Sturgeon says, as long as there is breath in my body, I will carry on with this campaign. And as you say, she wants to make the next general election a sort of referendum, a kind of proxy referendum, I guess, on that. We know, don't we, that the SNP are going to bang on about this issue forever. And there was absolute fury from the SNP benches in PMQs today, which happened just a couple of hours after this ruling. One SNP MP after the other getting to their feet, accusing London of blocking the will of the Scots. You can imagine that's all clipped up, put on their Twitter feed straight away. But Kevin makes a good point, which is Labour quite fancy their chances in Scotland at the next general election. They're hoping to win, I think it's about a dozen seats across the corridor around Glasgow and Edinburgh. And if Labour do better at the next general election in Scotland, if the SNP do worse, then will that kind of backfire for Nicola Sturgeon? And will that be seen as a sign that support for independence is on the wane in Scotland? That's a danger for her.
Yes, and Rishi Sunak will have to sing from the Unionist hymn sheet, will he not, for the next couple of years. He's also on the front page of the Eye, Kevin. Tory MPs are restless already. It does not take them long, does it? Housing policies, we know, we had in the papers from this morning, a suggestion that lots will quit before the next election. You name it, there's a list there on the front of the Eye.
No, absolutely. Look, it's a party that possibly doesn't want to be led or is incapable of being led anymore. And they both want new policies and then block the policies that are coming forward, say on housing. The vote's been postponed, put into law that target 300,000 new homes a year because Tories in the Shires don't want new houses on Greenbelt in their constituents. It's a real NIMBY instinct, but there's a lot of discontent. The Eye has spoken to quite a few Conservative MPs, and Kate and I in the House of Commons. You don't get many happy Conservative MPs at all. You get a fair few Labour, some still unhappy, has got to be said, but they're happy. And it's Sunak's got his work cut out because he's got a terrible economic outlook. Going into recession, the biggest squeeze in living standards in modern history, the tax burden, its highest since the Second World War. Going into recession, it looks like it'll be longer than other countries, still not recovered to pre-pandemic levels, unlike the other major economies in the G7. So you can see there's a lot for them to be worried about. And, this week we had a 32-year-old, I think he was 32, and a 40-year-old Conservative MP saying they're going to quit the next election. I think loads of them will go. And there's particular worry about the seats in the northeast, that part of the Red Wall, where voters turned off by Jeremy Corbyn gave the Conservatives a chance and feel it hasn't paid off. So, no, it's really unhappy. I don't know what he's going to be able to do, Sunak, to get this because back in good order for him because as I say, the economy's bad, living standards are bad, inflation's high, wages on going up as much as prices. So all in all, it's glum for the Tories. And
just quickly on this then, Kate, the Eye suggesting they need to get policies out of the door quickly as part of the solution, but every party is a broad church. Is the Conservative Party now unnaturally broad because they've got the traditional voters, you mentioned the Shires, Kevin, but they've also got that Red Wall block. It's urban areas, it's a different type of electorate, isn't it?
Yeah, look, there's a big question for the Tory leader who is now Rishi Sunak. Boris had this amazing electoral coalition which won him what in modern terms is a pretty landslide victory. You can get the working class up north and the northeast, these so-called red wallers, and these posh Shire Tories. Now, if Rishi wants to hold that coalition together, yes, he doesn't want to be battered by backbench revolts, but he's got to lead that coalition. He's got to still get policy out the door. In my opinion, the Sun's humble opinion, he's got to give people the chance to own their own homes. So, yes, it's a fractious party. It's had a history over the past few years of killing their leaders, rebelling, revolting. But it also does hanker after leadership. So Rishi has to tread carefully, but he can't be bullied by the Shire Tories on this.
OK. FT, one of those papers that has the silent protest of the German team, very effective, you might argue, Kevin, as many of the teams there, including those European teams that ended up wanting to wear the rainbow armband, try to find some way of making their feelings felt.
No, absolutely. They were one of seven, wasn't they? One Love armband, England, Wales, two of the others. This, in a way, is probably more effective. Although their protests, they're covering their mouths. You're not allowed to speak. It's just as the Iran's team, the players didn't sing their national anthem because of protests back home and expressing solidarity with people against a pretty violent and thuggish regime back in Tehran. And both of those, Germany and Iran, lost, it's got to be said, but I don't think the protests had anything to do with it. I think it's backfired completely on FIFA and the Qatari authoritarian anti-homosexual regime, banning the armbands. If they'd just allowed them to be worn, they would have been worn. Little comment. Now it's a huge issue right around the world, and it reflects badly on FIFA and on Qatar.
OK, it's also on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, Kate, but so too a suggestion that GPs really do need to start seeing more patients is something the Telegraph is very committed to. They suggest there should be a list of shame.
Yeah, this is this new idea that's coming into force that GP surgeries will be named and shamed for how many patients or what proportion of patients get offered a face-to-face GP appointment. Now, this is a story that's been rumbling along for a few months, isn't it? Post-COVID, can we get GP appointments at all? But if we want them face-to-face, can we get in there? I remember going to my own GP surgery after all the lockdown rules were lifted, and the whole GP surgery was covered in cling film, and we were allowed one in, one out. It was sort of very bizarre experience. But this is a story about how GPs will be named and shamed, be on a sort of league table, and you'll get to see how well your GP is faring compared to others. Now, crucially, this speaks to a broader government policy, which is they want to try and introduce more transparency and more competition within the NHS in the hope that that will lift standards and lift patient experiences. They think that's happened well in schools, in education, and they want to try and emulate that in the NHS and health service. I think a lot of my readers probably can't remember the last time they got offered a face-to-face GP appointment, and this will be pretty welcome. But the true proof will be in the pudding. Can people actually get to see a doctor within time?
OK, we'll see what happens with that. But, no doubt the Telegraph will keep on going with that one. Lots more still to come, including how much would you pay for a Christmas tree? Surely not that much. Back in a moment. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Kevin Maguire from The Mirror and Kate Ferguson from The Sun on Sunday. Welcome back to both of you. To The Times, we briefly go. Kevin, got a lot to pack in. If we all remember the light touch energy initiative of Jacob Rees-Mogg for some 15 million that was binned by Liz Truss. This one is going to be £25 million, a public information campaign to encourage people to reduce their energy bills by turning down boilers, radiators, etc. What do you think?
Yeah, well, let's hope it's not too little too late. No, I think it's a good idea. You might say a lot of it is common sense, but people just don't know and just need some encouragement. The government can see bills are soaring and people are going to be hit hard. Bills will go up again next April when the cap will be raised by another £500. So I really do think it's quite sensible. You could turn off lights on some public buildings as well. I think we can all save money and we can all help out, and it might avoid power cuts. But it's a shame the government is dithered and dallied and taken this long to agree the campaign.
Well, certainly the Times says Jeremy Hunt has said all households had a responsibility to cut energy use by as much as 15% to stop Britain from being blackmailed by President Putin. And the Times has been told about a full-scale public information campaign led by ministers, celebrities, adverts, etc. So a bit different from the light touch of Mr. Mogg, possibly. But to the FT, Kate, lots of Liz Truss period dwelling here. The guilt crisis was a big factor in this fear about the UK pension funds, the £500 billion hit to pension funds.
Yeah, I mean, so much has happened in politics over the last couple of months, but cast your mind back about 4 weeks ago, or a bit further maybe, when Liz Truss was PM and the mini budget sent those markets into mayhem, and you had this this run on the gilt market. Now, without wanting to get overly technical, what this basically did was wipe a bunch of value off the price of pension funds. And the FT's been given this figure that it's £500 billion was wiped off that. Now, if you read the small print of this article, it gets quite techie, but they basically tell us that it's because there was a type of over-leveraged derivative, which was a bit too in vogue and meant pension funds were too overexposed to parts of the market. And I should also reassure viewers, because it doesn't say anything in this story that people's individual pension pots will be at risk. But what we do know is that overall value of pension funds has plummeted this year, which is obviously a huge problem for us and our economy. And they'll be wanting to claw back that money with safer investments in the future.
Yes, yeah, it's all scary stuff at that point, wasn't it? It caused the Bank of England to step in, as we remember, and you might argue led to the downfall of quasi-quoting and then Liz Truss. But anyway, Daily Mail quickly, 30,000 parking tickets every day. Is it cowboys or is it ways local authorities do to claw back some money, Kevin?
Yeah, they don't make clear on this, but there's a lot of figures there in the Mail. 30,000 a day, one every 3 seconds, 2.7 million between April and June. Reckon it's going to raise 1 billion. Government's dropped a plan to have a code of practice, which it said would tackle cowboys and reduce the maximum charge from 100 to 50, not allow them to put debt collectors on you, but under a legal challenge or threat of a legal challenge, it's backed off. I mean, that's a big figure. 30,000 a day parking tickets, until you think in the UK there are more than 30 million vehicles on the roads. I think it's 32 million vehicles. So if I just do my quick mental maths, I would have thought that means, what, 1 in 1,000 or so vehicles get a ticket. That means if you've got something, you're probably not going to get a ticket for 3 years. I know some people will get more, but I think you always have to put these figures into context, which I don't think the Mail have there.
Yeah, good sums. Let's stay with some sums, shall we?
If I'm right.
Yeah, if you are. Well, nobody will check.
Don't encourage him. Do not encourage him.
Oh, yes, too late. Sorry, it came out of my mouth. Now then, Diggle Village Association has dug in a Christmas tree and it's cost quite a lot of money. Kate, tell us more.
This is a classic of the genre. The Metro is first off the mark. You know, get your photos in of rubbish town hall Christmas trees. Look at that. It's pathetic, isn't it? I have to say, I already tried to buy my Christmas tree, but they're not really on the market yet. I was a bit early. But yeah, this is your classic story of town halls that fork out lots of money and it turns out their Christmas trees are rubbish. You always get ones, don't they, where there's lots of they put a tree up and then they barricade it so no one can get near it. Wonky lights, Scrooge town hall bosses that don't turn up to click on the lights. I certainly am excited about reading many more.
I think we will, but if you were going to dig in a tree, you might choose a better example than this, don't you think? Although I quite like a slightly, an odd one. But anyway.
I like that Kate, though, wanted value for money and get it early to have it up.
I know. It's November. It's November, Kate.
Yeah.
We'll see you later. Thank you both very much indeed.